Welcome to Stop My Crisis. I'm your host, Vivian Gaspar, and here with us today we have Sergeant Fred Williams. He started his lifelong dedication of service as a Marine veteran. He has been a law enforcement officer for 23 years. Thank you so much for coming here today and sharing with us your knowledge and your expertise and taking time out of your really busy schedule helping everyone else.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. And we'd like to cover some topics today that are very important to everyone who's a parent.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's been on the news too much, and it's unfortunately ended very tragically too many times. Can you talk to us a little bit about cyberbullying? Because now we talk about a lot of bullying in schools.
Absolutely.
But everybody thinks you know about cyberbullying, but I would really like to go over it one more time and clarify it. So please, let's start off by just clarifying what's the difference between regular, traditional bullying in schools and cyberbullying?
Well, the traditional bullying, you think of the bully who comes onto the playground, shakes you down for your lunch money, or, threatens you, tells you you're wearing an ugly shirt and makes everybody else laugh at you and you feel bad. It's in person. It's right there. It happens and then it's over. Cyberbullying is the same outcome. You still feel belittled. You feel out of control. You feel bad, okay? But cyberbullying occurs from the computer or from the phone, a text, an email, a Facebook post, or any social media post. And sometimes these posts come from people you don't know, which makes them even more depressing in a lot of cases for the victim.
So are these children just feeling like they have self-esteem issues, that they actually pay attention to what's being sent to them because they're just words on a screen, regardless of if it's their laptop or usually it's people's phones nowadays. I mean, unfortunately, almost every kid has a phone.
Right.
But what is making our children so susceptible to letting it impact them so much? I mean, have you seen cases of suicide because of cyberbullying yourself?
Well, there are several cases, high-profile cases that have been in the news recently. A few here in New Jersey, unfortunately, where cyberbullying was a key part of what went into the depression of this poor individual to make them commit suicide. It's one of the types of things that builds up over a period of time. It's not something like somebody calls you a bad name one time and you feel so bad that you're going to be depressed. Cyberbullying, like any other type of consistent harassment, it gets bigger and bigger exponentially as it moves on. And for a child or a preteen, where some of these moments are all that is really on their mind, and if they have a sort of depression anyway, that's going to be very much magnified in their mind.
And what do you think makes someone, the anonymous usually, the perpetrator of the cyberbullying, why are they doing this? Have you ever talked to the kids who are doing it? Do you have the opportunity to do that?
Sure. So, some kids, don't get me wrong, a lot of the kids do know who this person is. In the cases of people they don't know, they may have 3 friends who say something to them that is belittling to them. And the next thing you know, friends of friends may see that in certain social media feeds and may say something, and the victim may not know those persons that are now involved in it. In either case, the outcome that happens is this person really doesn't know where to turn for the moment. They're experiencing this, and it's not like they can turn to a friend at school and say, did you see what he did? Or they can talk about it. Sometimes they don't want to tell their parents because it's like, well, my mom might say I have to get off Facebook. If I tell her that this is happening to me, first thing she's going to tell me is, well, you can't have Facebook anymore, okay? They don't think things through. They're being victimized. They could be suffering from a depressive state. They could already be feeling like nobody's going to listen to them. So that makes it all that much more difficult to cope with what's happening.
Have the police at all gotten involved? Because, is this considered a crime? If someone's doing something to taunt or bully, just despite the fact that it's not even in person any longer, is this a crime? It
is considered harassment, okay, which is not a very serious crime, mind you. But if there are threats made, if there's a threat that says, hey, if I see you, I'm gonna beat you up so bad, or if you wear that shirt again, or if you talk to my girlfriend again, I'm gonna do this, or if there's a threat a viable threat to hurt this person, whether it's with a weapon or with fists or anything else like that, that is a more serious form of harassment. And if it can be proven that this person has the means to carry that threat out, then it can be considered a terroristic threat.
What about if someone who's doing, the perpetrator is doing this to, the cyberbullying, the bully themselves? If they're not saying, I'll hurt you, but if they're intimidated by saying, why don't you hurt yourself? Is that the same thing?
It's very much the same thing, because now you're attacking a victim who could have be suffering from some sort of depression or other mental health aspect that is going to make them take that to heart. Okay, is going to add to their angst. Okay, so if you're trying to get them to form an opinion that they need to hurt themselves, that is certainly something that would be considered by any prosecutor as to the prosecutability of that crime, as to whether they can get a conviction for that.
So does that fall under harassment, intimidation? Because if they're not saying, I'm not sure what kind of crime that is, because if you're not saying that I'm going to hurt you, because of course, unfortunately, the few cases of suicide we've heard recently, at least that hit the news that I've heard about, they're saying, why don't you kill yourself? You're worth nothing. And then they do. That
can still, like I said, that's going to be up to the prosecutor and the police. The police are going to have to obtain the evidence that can support the heavier charge. Okay, if there's evidence to say that this person's actions of hurting themselves is a direct result of what this bully or cyberbully did, they can be held culpable. If that's something that a prosecutor can prove in court and that the police have collected that evidence that can support that, they can be charged with it and hopefully convicted. Okay.
Well, what if you find out through whatever means that your child is the bully? What do they do to the person who is the bully in that case?
Well, in a lot of cases, I've seen parents who don't want to accept the fact that their child is being the bully. And I've also seen parents who have said, who have been so shocked and surprised that they made it their business to make sure that their child got the appropriate help to deal with the feelings of wanting to control somebody or find out what it is that is making them bully this person. So I've seen both. And the thing you have to remember is the bully is just as much a victim as the victim is sometimes. Sometimes the bully comes from a household where that behavior may be something that they see all the time in their own parents or in their own siblings. So they could be acting out in a way that they're just kind of carrying forward what they've already seen most of their lives at home. And to them, they may not even recognize the fact that what I'm doing could be hurtful to someone. I'm just doing what, happens to me all the time. So
you think that when they're doing these bullying actions, they don't realize that they're doing something that could be a bullying action, sending these text messages, they may be thinking that it makes them feel good from them, but that, hey, I have power over someone else, but do they realize it's a crime?
Sometimes people could just be thinking, I'm going to say this, and they know it's hurtful, but to them, it's like, it's a joke. They should have been able to take it. But everybody, you can't count on the fact that everybody is going to either see the humor in your sarcasm or shake off what you're telling them as nothing because it doesn't mean that much to you. Okay, and then sometimes there are the actual people who want to hurt somebody with the words they say. So, that's something you have to look. You have to look at the totality of circumstances, the big picture of what's going on, and figure out how it applies to this victim.
How young is it go, and does it go past teenagers? Then they do this?
It's cyberbullying. You can see there are cases of cyberbullying that turned out to affect young adults in college. Okay, any type of a school age, young adult, I would say college age or below. Peer pressure is very important. How you fit in your social group is very important, particularly if you're a graduating high school senior and now you're going to a new college. You go off to college or university, you don't know anybody, okay? Maybe one or two people if you're lucky. And now you have to get into this whole new social dynamic to, understand and get into the things that are going on around you and be successful at it. So during those periods of trying to adapt to that, people are very susceptible to things like that. A clique can form. You may want to be in that clique. All of a sudden, some people in that clique find things about you they don't like, and now they're harping on that, and that's hurtful to a person.
What's the youngest age range that you've seen or
Bullying,
that you've heard of?
The youngest, we see kids in elementary school. A lot of times kids who are just getting into social media for the first time may say things, do things that they really don't understand themselves, how they could be hurtful, or there's misinterpretation. Okay, somebody could say something, and if you and I are talking face to face, you see my face, you see my gestures, you see exactly what I mean as I'm saying the words that I'm speaking. But in a text message or on a post, if a person's not using emojis or something else to do that, to take the place of that, you can very easily misconstrue what you're reading. Okay, you can very easily think that now what's happening to me is oh, this is awful. Why would they say that? And it could be as bad as what the bully wanted, or it couldn't be as bad, but you don't know.
Vast majority of these cases are not ending up tragically because there's so
Right.
many more. What makes the news is what's tragic,
Right,
which should
exactly.
never have even happened, obviously.
Exactly.
But but it can still affect, and most likely it does affect the victim's mentality, how they feel about themselves, how they perform in school. There's so many different aspects in how it affects them.
Sure.
Maybe they become introverted. What have you seen have been the effects of being cyberbullied?
Some of the effects, introverted, becoming introverted, the kid may already be an introvert, and that just makes them withdraw even more. You may have a child who's trying to break out. Maybe they just moved in the neighborhood. Maybe they're just trying to make new friends, okay? And all of a sudden now something could happen where someone may speak some words to them or say something to them, or, like I said earlier, a clique could form. And now this kid is feeling like, well, why'd I even bother? Why'd I bother to do that? They don't care. And then other kids are very resilient. It's like, oh, these guys over here don't like me. All right, I don't need them.
So
I'm
how
going to
can
go
you
over
teach a
here.
kid I wish we knew how we could teach a kid to be resilient, because that's obviously the better way to go. If you don't like what someone's saying or doing, find someone else who's going to be kinder or more willing to become friendly and get along.
Well, I agree, but not all kids have the ability to do that. And I mean, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I don't know why it might come more naturally to some kids as opposed to others, but that's just the way we all are. We're all wired differently, and we all learn differently. So as children, I mean, if you see your child, or if a teacher sees a child in class who is normally open, gregarious, and participating in class, and then all of a sudden they're not, a teacher knows that there's something wrong. Okay, a parent knows that there's something wrong. If a kid, on the other hand, is introverted and just really not participating in anything, and all of a sudden they are, that's going to be a welcome change. People are going to say, hey, that's great. But the other way around is the one where we really need to be concerned, at least find out what's going on. It could be something small. It could be something that has been happening for a long period of time.
Can you give us just a couple of tips on what a parent should be aware of if there's a potential for cyberbullying? And let's say they find out there is. Okay, let's start there. If they find out there has been cyberbullying for any reason, they just come across it, are there software that you could attach to your child's phone that you're aware of, that you recommend?
There are, well, I can't recommend like any
that
particular
you say that
product,
has
but
worked,
but
or
there
that's a good idea.
there are apps out there that parents can install on their phones that can allow them to read text messages and mirror the phone's operation, their child's phone operation. And also it has GPS locating on it. So, your child says, oh, I'm going to Susan's house after school, and Susan lives at 123 Anywhere Street. You can check that and, oh, okay, she's at 123 Anywhere Street. And so you can verify. The other thing is if you have a child that's just getting into the social media aspect of things, like Facebook is a good example. You can friend them. You can be their friend and be able to see the posts that they're interacting with people. And you can also set the privacy settings so that the kid is only interacting with friends, okay? Not the entire Facebook community.
Oh, you mean
okay?
a few billion people?
A few billion people out there, So
that could be a problem.
Yeah,
Then you have safety issues.
Exactly. You may not want your 12-year-old dealing with, the billions of people out there who have different political opinions than they do. So it's one of those things where you can do that. As kids get older, I would suggest that parents kind of still be friends with them, but back away. You know, if you see some kind of comment, don't just try and join in on the thread to be joining in on it, because now you might embarrass your child. Yeah,
you know, like a helicopter parent.
Exactly. You know, a helicopter parent on Facebook. So
that's even scary. That you think it's you, the stalker.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it happens. You know, and I mean, kids go through that period where they go from being, you know, oh my gosh, I need my parents, I love my parents, to, oh, why are they in my lives? And then they become young adults, and it's like, wow, I really so glad you guys are here. So they run through that whole cycle. And when you run through that cycle on social media with them, there are going to be times where they're okay with you being with them on social media, and there are going to be times when they're kind of embarrassed or think that, you know, why don't you back off a little bit? They will just come out and tell their kids, I'm gonna shut you down if this and that happens. And then the kid may look at the parent and say, well, I saw you say these kinds of things to your friends on Facebook or on Instagram. And so now you have a situation where you weren't doing what you wanted them to do. And
you should always model the behavior.
Some children will look back at that and say, oh, well, isn't that kind of deceitful? Why are you doing that? So, but you're going to tell me I can't do it? So, I mean, you have to know your child. Your child has to accept your rules, okay? And you guys got to work that out. You know, there's a lot of things that just don't get worked out sometimes, and that's when you get problems.
Well, I think this is information every parent really needs to know. And you're saying it starts in the tween years, maybe as soon as
maybe even younger.
They
if you let your child on there.
How old does a kid have a phone? Maybe in 9, 10 nowadays, 11.
Say, yeah.
So as soon as they have a phone, I think this is more prevalent.
That's where it starts.
So it starts at maybe 10 years old, for example, depends on, and goes into the young 20s.
And I mean, there are all kinds of things that can happen once that child gets a phone. Once you introduce that, you got to come up with the rules. You got to teach them how to be safe.
That's great. Yeah, that's very true. I understand about the seriousness of cyberbullying, but we started to now go into how, unfortunately, the internet is now being used as a whole new hunting ground for predators.
Oh, yeah.
To gain access to, unfortunately, you know, to help their pedophilia to teenagers. I'm sure usually it's girls, but it could be boys. What can you tell us about this? How do we keep our teens safe in this situation?
You stay involved with them. You know, you talk to them. My daughters know that, you know, there's nothing that they could experience out there in the world that, as long as I'm alive, and if they need to reach out to me, I said, I don't care what kind of light you're in. If you did something and you're embarrassed about it, or you think that, wow, I really screwed this up, you know, I said, I'm the guy that you can always call. Okay, I'm not going to pass judgment on you. I'm going to help you. And if there's something that you need to get out of that, and there's a punishment that needs to happen because of that, we'll deal with that later. But we're going to deal with you first. And that's always first and foremost.
The most important thing is making sure your kids know that they could trust you.
Right.
That it's better to trust than fear.
Right. Okay. That's how I feel as a father. That's what has worked for me as a police officer. Okay. When I had to deal with informants, they expected a certain level of trust. I expected it. You knew at some point that was going to deteriorate because
you did undercover work, right?
Because when you're on divergent paths with another person, you may have a common ground right here, but over here, not so much. Okay, so you have to realize where these parameters are. Okay, you know your kids, or a parent knows their kids, hopefully better than anybody. And that's how you build on those relationships. If you suspect that something's going on, then, you know, there are other things you can look at. You can look at the kids that your child is hanging out with. You can, or if you don't know the kids that your child is hanging out with,
get to know them.
You know, yeah, we've dealt with parents. You know, they call up, they say, hey, you know, my son, my daughter, they're not where they're supposed to be, and I'm concerned. You say, okay, we're going to help you. Do you have a recent picture? Oh, no, not really.
You don't have a recent picture of your own child?
Well, whose friend's house do you think they might be at? Oh, it's this guy, Bobby. He's a real good guy. Okay, where's Bobby live? I'm not too sure. Okay, do you know Bobby's last name? Oh, well, you only met him a little while ago, so I don't know. So it's like, parents are busy. Okay, right. Parents work. Okay, even if you're a stay-at-home parent, you are busy. So it's difficult sometimes to stay abreast of all of these things and they don't come into play until you have to pick up the phone and call the police, or you have a problem that you need to work out now. So stay involved in your kids' lives. Keep them in activities that they're getting something out of. Keep them involved in educational things, in social things. Monitor their work. Okay, let them know when they're doing good. Let them know when they need to pick it up a little bit. And you'd be surprised. Okay, initially, I've had some of my older daughters. They call me up, and it's like, you remember that time you said this and that and the other. Now they're in their 30s, and they're telling me something that happened years ago, and I really sometimes might not remember it, but they do. And so now what you're saying and doing is having an impact. Okay, you may not get the report back right away, but it's there. So those are the things I would suggest for parents to do. Ever since what really kind of brought this to light initially years ago were chat rooms. Okay, people would pretend to be somebody else, and they would lure these girls or male victims, whichever, into these chat rooms, or meet them in chat rooms, begin to talk to them, pass themselves off as a person who might be interested in them on their level. Okay, but it would really be like a 55-year-old man talking to a 14-year-old girl. And the next thing you know, hey, let's meet, let's do this. And then the pedophile or the predator gets to meet them and do the things that they practice in their mind to do to get this person to allow them to have sex with them, or not, or just do other criminal things to them. So you have to be wary that there are people who are using the internet and social media pages just specifically for this purpose. Okay, law enforcement usually is on top of a lot of it. I mean, you'll read about things that state police do. You read about things that prosecutors' offices are doing, where they are, getting multiple officers from different departments, sometimes specifically trained in how to mine these areas for, cyber criminals. And they employ some of the same tactics that the cyber criminals use,
which is great,
on their victim to catch them.
I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
It uses their own methods against them.
Absolutely. Okay. And when you see these, I mean, you'll see them on the news periodically. There'll be a roundup of however many people that were caught up in this particular ring. And, it's one of those things that has proven to be very successful, because just the same way that predator can go out there and, in that target-rich environment and look for a victim, we can also do the same thing to find several of these predators at one time.
Well, my answer to that is thank God.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank God that we have law enforcement smart and using these tactics and a lot of research to round up these individuals. And what do you think is the likelihood of this happening? I mean, people always say what they hear on the news, what they hear on TV. We're here on TV now. Mm-hmm. What is the likelihood of that really happening in the case of an average teenager?
Well, the likelihood, I would say the likelihood is at a higher level than most people would be comfortable with. I couldn't give you an exact percentage or figure, but just from what I see in the news and what I see occurring in my own job, the types of calls that I experience going on and answering with this, and that I have experienced, I would say that more people than we would like to realize are out there doing this. Because one thing that is true, whether it's a cyber criminal or in your face in person criminal, is that person may get caught that one time, but how many times did it happen that they didn't get caught?
Right.
So for them to get to the level where they're already comfortable doing this, they had to already experience either a certain degree, a degree of success at doing it. So now there's no way to measure, what happened years before a person was caught and nothing never came of it. There's no way we can know, but there is a way that, we can determine what happens beyond that point, so and that's where the punishment comes in. That's where, people have to serve sentences and get help, or whatever this case may be, that's going to help try to get them to become a more productive member of society.
Your tactics that you're employing are what people should remember. And I know money's tough for everybody which is most everyone.
Sure.
But you'd rather have a temporary little strap additional than have to call the police that your child's missing because you didn't stay close enough involved. The internet almost provides a whole new set of challenges than people who were parents 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to change that.
Right.
So we just have to just be extra vigilant. And so it's really important that people remember to stress their kids to only interact with people they've met in real life and not meet them after just meeting in the cyber world.
Right. I mean, you have to understand there are people in your life and you get to know them. There are people you may know on the computer, and the only thing you really know about them is what you've discussed.
And as much as, how do you trust somebody you've never met in real life?
Right.
So, well, Fred, thank you very much. I really appreciate this because every single parent needs to know every single word that just came out of your mouth. And thank you very much for watching. And please remember the little extra time that you spend with your child, reinforcing the trust. And just like the sergeant said today, take the time with your children to remind them that it's about the crisis that they might be in right that moment and that they should worry about any kind of punishment later.